Hey, Julia Barzyk here from Wise Investigator. So I would like to give you 3 reasons why you should consider applying for DOD or Department of Defense funding for your basic research. Now, there's many reasons why a DOD funding can make sense for your career. It's maybe something that you have pursued in the past. Perhaps you've had some success or maybe not, because people can definitely feel that DOD is hard to break into. So before we get into why that may be, and I'm not even going to do that here in the video, I'm going to point you to something else that will explain that. But I would like to make the case that it is worth it to pursue this DOD funding for some very specific reasons that I think will appeal to you as a PI. Okay, first of all, the DOD does support high-risk research. And the reason for this is it's complicated, right? Or you can say that there's many factors that go into this, but I will just say generally that the decision-making process regarding funding decisions is different than it is at what we would call like a community-driven organization like NSF, for example, because DOD is a mission-driven organization, or the organizations within DOD are mission-driven. So for this reason, and I'm not going to, again, get into this right here, but I will say that it does make it easier to support high-risk research because you're not dealing with a consensus-based decision-making process as often. Now, this is a generalization. That's not to say that consensus-based decisions are not used in DOD, but very, very broadly, generally, we can say that there's less reliance on a consensus-based decision-making process, and this, in turn, will be, it makes it more possible to support the high-risk research. Okay, so another reason why you may want to apply for DOD funding is that it can be easier to get interdisciplinary type of research supported. The reason for this is that DOD funding organizations generally, they are usually not organized solely by academic discipline, but rather they're organized by a problem area, for example. So this really does a lot to break down those boundaries between traditional disciplines, and it can make it easier to find a home for your interdisciplinary research. Now, the third reason that you may want to pursue DOD funding is that there can be a transition pathway for your basic research. So if you work in basic research, you may be very interested in seeing some results from your work transitioned and maybe even in years ahead become some kind of fieldable technology. And when you're working within DOD, supported by DOD and making those connections there, learning about what's going on in the DOD labs with the internal research, there is a pathway for transition. And so this can be very meaningful to some PIs. Some PIs are not as interested in this, but many are. So this is another reason to pursue DOD research. So how do I know this? How can I say this with certainty? And again, this is not any kind of official advice here. I just want to put that out as a caveat. But I did serve for 10 years at the U.S. Army Research Office, which is a major DOD funder, and it's with this knowledge and this background and this expertise that I'm bringing you this material today. So now, I am only getting into these little teasers here of why you may want to do this because I have created a comprehensive video course that's completely free. It's over 3 hours long. It's an overview of DOD funding for basic researchers. These are researchers like probably you watching this at U.S. institutions. And since we're on the topic of U.S. stuff, right, don't rule out DOD funding, even some of the early career awards. There's different rules for each one of these different programs and agencies. But if you are not a U.S. citizen, if you are not a permanent resident, if you are at a U.S. institution, then do consider the DOD funding. And DOD even funds research outside of the United States, which is something that surprises many PIs. Okay, so I am going to put a link below to the course. That is, again, free. It's very comprehensive, but even though it is comprehensive, it's still scratching the surface in many ways just because this is a really big topic. But what I have done is broken down those 3+ hours into 8 lessons, so that should help you navigate to the section of the course that might be most useful for you at this time. Again, that's totally free. You enter your email address, you'll get signed up to receive my newsletter. If you're already getting the newsletter, you're not going to get 2 copies or anything. You'll still just get your 1 copy each week. So if you watch this course, you are going to learn 3 important keys that will help you have success with DoD funding. One of them is that I will explain to you how it can actually be easier to win DoD funding than funding from some other organizations. So you're probably wondering how that could be. I get into that and explain that in the course. I also explain what the key is to winning big DoD awards. Okay, so if you're interested in those MURIs and other large awards, how do you get there? I talk about that in the course. And in the course, I also break down with examples and walk you through the process of finding and then connecting with DoD scientists and engineers, not just at the funding organizations, but at the many, many labs where in-house research is happening. These are very important people to connect with so that you can understand what is the research that DoD is doing right now, today, and who are the people doing it, and how might you be able to help them do their work by becoming a collaborator. So again, the course is totally free, and I will link to that below. Please check that out and let me know what questions you have.